Hi, and thank you for joining us. I'm Leon Gaumond, I'm the town manager, and with us today is Rip Hastings, who's the town moderator, and we are here to talk to you about our town meeting preview for annual town meeting that's going to be on Monday, May 4th at 7 p.m. at the high school.
We'd like to encourage everybody to come. If you haven't been to town meeting before, don't be intimidated. It's pretty straightforward. We'll give you a little help getting ready and lots of hand holding along the way once you get there. The most important rule about town meeting is show up early enough to be available to hear what's going on at 7 o'clock sharp, because the meeting is going to start at 7 o'clock sharp.
And sometimes parking is hard to find, so you have to get there early to make sure that you can find a parking space close enough for your needs to get into the building.
Yep. And carpool if you can. It's going to be at the Weston High School in the auditorium. And if there's an overflow, we'll be using the gymnasium. I'm sorry to say that as far as I'm aware right now, there is no special childcare being provided by the folks at the high school, middle school. Nor is there any dedicated public transportation that's going to get people to and from the meeting. So carpool if you can, come early, and we look forward to seeing you there.
Rip, tell us a little bit. You're the moderator, so your job really is to run town meeting. For those who may not have been to town meeting before, how would you describe town meeting?
So fundamentally, the town meeting is the legislative branch of Weston's municipal government. All of the decisions about raising taxes, raising money from taxes or otherwise, all the decisions about spending money and what to spend that money on, decisions about our local municipal laws, our general bylaw, our zoning bylaw, and other matters ultimately get decided by the town meeting. Many of the questions relating to those issues come to town meeting on the basis of proposals that are made by the select board or the planning board or other folks in town, including citizens, if you wish to make a specific proposal. But the ultimate decider is the town meeting, and the town meeting is all of us. Every registered voter is a potential legislator in Weston's town meeting.
So there are two different kinds of town meetings. You got open town meeting and you have representative town meeting. Rip, we have an open town meeting we've had for, I don't know, hundreds of years, can we say?
We've had an open town meeting in Weston since before there was a United States of America. We've had open town meeting in Weston since the town was established, and before that, we had a less secular version of the same thing, which was the meetings of the first parish in Weston, and that goes back to the 1690s. So we've been doing this for a long time.
So the only qualification that you have to have in order to come to town meeting and vote or speak on articles or even make motions is you got to be over 18 and you got to be a registered voter of the town.
That's right.
You don't have to have any other qualifications or certifications or general knowledge. That's all you need to do in order to participate at town meeting and be a voting member of our legislative body.
Correct.
Yeah.
It's pretty straightforward. And there's lots of information already available about what's going to happen at town meeting. The first and most important thing for you to be aware of is we've both brought copies of the town meeting book.
Every household in Weston should have received one of these already.
And they're available everywhere in town. And they contain the warrant for the meeting, about which we'll speak in just a minute, as well as the reports of the Finance Committee, the Select Board, and the School Committee with respect to the matters in their areas of interest. There's also the report of the Community Preservation Committee, which I don't think was always in the warrant book, but it is now and has been for a while. Everything you need to know is in this book. If you can spend a little time with it, read the reports and take a look at the warrant articles, you'll have a preview of everything that's going to happen. And if you have questions, we're going to give you an opportunity, not today, but on Tuesday, April 28th at 6 p.m. at the town hall to have a Q&A with the town manager and the town moderator about any matters of substance or procedure relating to the town meeting that you would like to have answered.
as Rip was saying, there is no shortage of areas where you can find information about the articles that are going to appear at town meeting. The warrant book is one of them, but our town website has a full explanation of all of the articles that are going to be debated and considered at the annual town meeting. It starts with the budget and it goes through all of the articles with every supporting information that we have that we think that you will find interesting as you prepare to cast votes at town meeting.
And there's also the Weston Observer and the Hub, which are sources of information about what's going on and what's going to be happening at the town meeting.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. So there's plenty of ways, and of course, in addition to our meeting that we're going to have on April 28th, if you have questions about operations, the way that this works, any of the articles, don't hesitate to reach out to me or Rip in advance. You can email us, and we'll have our email addresses at the bottom of the screen here. And you can ask us any questions. We're happy to help answer any questions that you folks may have to make you comfortable about what's being asked of you at town meeting. Now, town meeting is, if you've never been before, it might seem a little bit onerous, but tell me a little bit about how town meeting works. Like, what would somebody expect if they just walk in the door? What's the first thing that's going to greet them?
sure. As you walk in the door, you're going to be met with a long table of individuals who are checking folks into the meeting. And there might even be a table in front of them with a lot of materials related to the meeting that might be helpful. But you'll check in as a registered voter with one of the individuals who's doing that, and they will give you a clicker, an electronic voting device, which will enable you to cast an electronic vote. The town adopted electronic voting. It's probably 8 or 10 years ago now. We've been doing it for quite a while. It's very efficient, and it's anonymous for those of you who care about that. Once you've got your clicker, you'll find a seat, and please sit in the auditorium if you can, because there's lots of room there. Maybe 500 people can sit in the auditorium, and it's particularly easier to do that if folks who arrive early are willing to sit in the middle of the aisles, middle of the rows, rather than on the ends. But if we get everybody into the auditorium, that would be wonderful. If we don't get everybody into the auditorium, there'll be overflow space in the gymnasium. As I said, the meeting's going to start at promptly at 7 o'clock.
Provided we have a quorum.
Provided we have a quorum, which is 80 voters. We haven't had a problem with that.
No.
But we have had, as Leon pointed out a little bit earlier, we have had some difficulty getting people into the meeting, particularly if there's a lot of interest in the meeting and the traffic is heavy. So, as we said before, leave early, plan to get there 15 or 20 minutes early if you can, or earlier if you want to get a great seat, and carpool if you can. Once you're in and you're settled and 7 o'clock happens, there'll be some preliminary activity, largely me, sort of explaining what we're going to be doing and how we're going to proceed with the meeting, outlining a few procedural rules that I will ask the meeting to adopt, such as speaking limits, 5 minutes per presentation, 5 minutes per speaker who has a question or a comment, pro or con. And questions are particularly welcome. Comments are also welcome. And if there's something that you don't like about something that's been proposed, there are opportunities for you to move for an amendment. But once we've gone through these preliminaries and we've adopted the rules of the meeting, as it were, and one of the handouts available as you come in is going to look something like this, and it contains a set of procedures that we've adopted on a regular basis, probably for the last 15 or 20 minutes. We'll be adopting that, as well as a couple of other matters that I'll ask you to agree to. And then we'll proceed with the meeting. I think the first order of business in the meeting is going to be to ask everybody to recognize folks who've retired from town service and to acknowledge those who've been recently elected to town service. And then we're off to the races on Article 2.
We're off to the races on Article 2. Just to let everybody know, there will be microphones in the room. They're usually seated at the front. There's a main podium with the main microphone, and then there's microphones on either side at the front of the auditorium. So if you wanted to ask and be recognized, you simply have to walk up to the one of the microphones and be recognized by the moderator. And to be recognized by the moderator, you will give your name and your address, and you'll ask for to be recognized, and the moderator will recognize you for your comments, questions, or statements, whatever that may be, from the microphone. So that's good. And we are also governed by town meeting time, which is a document that goes back, a long period of time. It kind of talks about how town meeting operates in Massachusetts, and very similarly, from Cape Cod to the Berkshires, town meeting is kind of universally done all throughout the Commonwealth. They're not always the same rules. Each town has its own quirks and its own things that make it special or unique. But all in all, town meeting time is a great place for you to learn the parliamentary procedure as to how the meeting will be operated by the moderator, if you're ever interested in that.
Yep, and if you have any questions about that, or a specific point that you're concerned about in connection with the upcoming meeting, email me at moderator@westonma.gov, and I'll be happy to give you a call if you leave your number, or email you back.
So let's talk about the warrant, Rip. We'll
Sure.
talk about the articles that are coming forward. The annual town meeting, the way that I've always looked at it, is this is our money town meeting. We typically set the budget for the next fiscal year. And can you believe we're already doing fiscal year 2027? It's unbelievable that we're already at 2027. But we typically will do all of our financial articles for the upcoming fiscal year that runs from July 1st through June 30th. That is the state and the municipal fiscal years here in Massachusetts. Article 2 is usually the first article, and it is usually the most important article, at least from the town manager's perspective. It's the most important article because it sets what the operational budget for the town, the police, the fire, the schools, the library, the council on aging. It sets what the operating budget is for the upcoming year. This year, the operating budget of the town has been unanimously supported by the Finance Committee and the Select Board, and it's going to, there will be presentations by all three of those, for both of those boards, as well as the school committee, who will present to the people of the town some of the highlights that they see in the operating budget. The Select Board will talk a little bit about the long-range plans of the town and what things are looking for on the town side of operations. The school committee will do the exact same thing. The finance committee will take maybe a broader look at the whole operations and give their thoughts about the things that are important to them and what should be important to the residents of the town as well.
Yep. And I've encouraged, as moderator, I'm encouraging the Select Board and the school committee and the finance committee to build in their presentation at town meeting on the substantial reports that they've already provided you in the budget book. There's no need to go through, page by page what they've already told you in writing, and I'm hoping that they'll present the highlights and that those presentations will be relatively succinct and we'll be able to move on. So again, I'll emphasize, please read the budget book, those reports, and if you have a question, jot the question down. Come to the meeting prepared with your question, and when the opportunity arises, and it will, come up to a microphone, ask to be recognized, and state your question. And 9 times out of 10, you'll get an answer to your question. And if you really want to get an answer to your question, submit it in advance, either directly to the affected committee or board or to me, and I'll pass it along.
In the warrant and budget book that we've been talking about, it doesn't just include reports. The actual budget, pretty much line item budget, is detailed within the warrant and budget book, so that, if you're interested in how the police budget has changed from last year to this year, you'll be able to look at it and make a determination based upon your review of the budget. So there is a simple majority vote on the budget. 50% plus one person, will adopt the operating budget for the town. And pretty much all of the articles that are going to be debated at town meeting require a simple majority to vote. There is one article that is that will be a water department borrowing. They're doing some capital improvements, and under Mass General Law, any borrowings done in a town meeting require a 2/3 vote. But for all of the other articles, all of them simply require a simple majority vote.
Right. And that particular borrowing article that Leon's mentioned is going to be buried in a funky thing called the consent agenda, which we'll talk a little bit about as well.
Right. So the consent agenda, one of the things that this town has done, this town has been very interested in streamlining the operations of the town meeting. There are some towns, we were just talking about, Rip, some towns, the operating budget is done as we do it here, where we present the budget in rote form, and then we ask for questions and concerns. There are some towns that go line item by line item, and determine whether or not that there's any questions about individual line items within the operating budget. Weston hasn't done that.
Nope.
They really rely on the boards and committees, particularly the finance committee, to do a thorough job of evaluating the budget. There are budget requests that come from the department managers, the school superintendent, and the town manager to ensure that the taxpayers are getting the right budget that goes to town meeting. But there are some towns that actually go line item by line item. In Weston, this town has adopted a consent agenda where a lot of the routine articles, or articles that were deemed to be non-controversial, but things that we have to do on an annual basis, the town has lumped those together as to one item. Basically a bunch of routine articles, non-controversial articles that will require one presentation and one vote on all of these, as opposed to individual presentation and individual votes. This is an attempt to try to streamline the operations of town meeting and take something that could be routine and make it not an hour, but make it more like 5 or 10 minutes instead.
Yeah, the consent agenda is going to consist of the articles, I think it's 3 through 14.
Correct.
And what I will do is I will mention the name. Well, no, I won't do that. Let me start over again. The way the consent agenda will work is that a member of the select board, I believe it's going to be Lisa Revers.
Correct.
Chairman Revers is going to state the name of the individual article that's in the consent agenda, read a short paragraph about it that adds any pertinent information that needs to be considered by the voters at the meeting. And if 10 voters want to hold that article out and discuss it separately, we will do that. We'll pull it out of the consent agenda and set it aside. And we'll go through all of those 10 articles that are in the 11 articles that are in the consent agenda and treat them that way. And at the end, there will be a group of articles that will be collectively voted. And as Leon mentioned earlier, it will take a 2/3 vote because one of those articles is a bonding request, and that requires 2/3.
Now, if it is a majority vote, but not a 2/3 vote, I think what we would do is adopt all of the ones that required a majority vote, and then we would have a debate about the one for 2/3, correct?
That's a good question. I don't think that we've actually thought about that.
It's never come up.
I would expect,
and we hope it won't come up this time either.
I would expect that if there are concerns about that particular article, that 10 people will ask to pull it out and have it considered separately. If we vote on the consent agenda and it includes that article, and we don't achieve a 2/3 vote, I would expect a motion for reconsideration would be in order, or maybe another motion under the consent agenda that would eliminate that particular article, and then we would revote. Now, it's true that we would probably already know that we'd gotten a majority vote.
Correct.
But just to be absolutely clear about what people are doing and what people are voting on, I think it would probably be better to strip out that article and revote just the ones that require a majority.
See, this is why we have multiple people who are experts thinking about these things and what would happen. Just so that you know, as we're talking about this, all of the town department heads, the select board, finance committee, school committee members, other elected bodies, but also our town council, who is the town's attorney, will be at town meeting to help answer any questions, to help Rip make good decisions, to help Janet, our town clerk, who assists Rip in the administration of the annual town meeting. All of the people who are the decision makers and policy makers and those who serve those boards and committees will be there to assist.
Yep.
So the first item under the consent agenda is the funding of OPEB. And OPEB is a fancy acronym for other post-employment benefits. Municipalities are required to declare on its balance sheets what the outstanding liability is for health insurance for retirees. And we in Weston have been very smart about pre-funding some of those that is determined to be a good best practice by our bond rating agency. It's one of the things, Rip, that helps us maintain our AAA bond rating is that we understand what our liability is and we're making progress on meeting that liability.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yep.
So that's a good positive article. This year, the appropriation is about $2.3 million for that article.
And it's supported unanimously by the select board and the finance committee.
Correct.
How about Article 4? What's next?
So Article 4 is the acceptance of Chapter 90 funds. And for those of you who may not know what that is, and I wouldn't blame you if you didn't, when you fill up your gas tank in your car, you pay a little bit or a lot in taxes for gas taxes. A portion of that every year comes back to, or is supposed to come back to cities and towns in the form of Chapter 90 funds. Chapter 90 funds are monies that come as a direct appropriation from the state to towns based upon a formula that they've established on the length of road miles primarily. And it basically gives monies to cities and towns for the maintenance of their sidewalks, their roads, their bridges, and so on. This article will allow the town to receive those funds and use them for road improvements.
Great.
And recommended by Select Board and the Finance Committee.
And as you'll see in your budget book, it looks like that's about $750,000.
It would be, right? Yep. So it's a decent amount of money coming back to the town from the state.
Well, ultimately, it's coming back to the town from us.
From us.
From
yes.
us to the gas station operator, to the state, and back to us.
Correct. The next article is Article 5. It's the property tax deferral income limits. The town of Weston has a program where we can help people stay in their houses longer. And there is a program, it's only, there is some income qualifications for this. There is an explanation about this project on the town's website, on the town meeting page, if you are interested in seeing if you might qualify. Essentially, it sets income limits for a household, and it will determine whether or not you can defer some of your property taxes from 1 year to when you sell your house or you move out of town or that sort of thing. Again, unanimously supported by the Finance Committee and the Select Board.
Okay, and then we move on to Article 6, which is appropriate from the water enterprise budget.
So Articles 6, 7, and 8, when I was talking earlier about the operating budget of the town, there are three different budgets that are somewhat separate from the operating budget of the town, and primarily because it utilizes user fees to help primarily support their operations. In the case of the one that you just highlighted, this is our water department. And the water department, not surprisingly, is not really funded by the taxpayers of Weston directly. It's funded through the user fees that you would pay in your water rates. So water rate payers are the ones who end up paying for the operations, by and large, the operations of the water department.
So if you're a business located in Weston and you use water, you'll be paying
Even though you don't have a
even
vote
though
at
you
town
may
meeting.
not have a vote.
Correct.
And if you're a large landowner or a nursery or I suppose a golf course using a lot of water that is being purchased from the town, you're
That's
going
correct.
to pay. Yep.
There might even be residents in other towns that get their water through the town of Weston just because of the geography of where their houses are.
Yep.
You know, so long and short of it is the users of the water here in Weston are the ones who end up paying for the water department. The next enterprise budget is the Brook School Apartments. I'm sorry, the next enterprise is the recreation enterprise, and roughly 70-30 split between the taxpayers and the user fees are what governs and what counts for the operating budget for the recreational enterprise. 70% of the about 70% of the operations of our recreation department come from users fees, people who go to camps or programs or go to the pool and get subscriptions. These folks are contributing mightily to the operations of the recreation. And about 30, it fluctuates, about 30% or so is the general tax base, because some of the programs that are operating under recreation are to the benefit of the entire community, whether you use the programs or not. It could be a variety of services or programs. The next enterprise budget will be Brook School Apartments. As you know, we run Brook School Apartments for the elderly on School Street, and that is entirely funded through the operations of those buildings is entirely funded by the rents that come for the people who live there. So these are part of the operating budget of the town, but they're voted separately because they are separate budgets.
Got it.
And by the way, the good news, again, unanimously supported by the Finance Committee and the Select Board to be endorsed by a town meeting.
So Article 9.
Article 9 is essentially a pass-through article. If you are a cable subscriber here in Weston, you pay on your cable bill, 50 cents or $1 or $2 every pay period, every bill that you pay for things called public access. And those monies go to the town as revenues that the town can use to support public access opportunities within the community. Here in Weston, we partner with our friends at Weston Media. By the way, they're bringing forward this presentation that we are doing here today. So we thank Weston Media for their service to the community.
And this is how we move the funds to Weston Media so that they can utilize those funds in their operation.
We essentially provide it to them as a grant.
Yep.
Correct.
Again, unanimously supported.
That's correct.
Yep. And then we're on to Article 10, which is operating expenses, capital items. Can you explain that a little bit?
Yeah, so one of the good things that I like about the Weston budget, and I've said it in some of our budget meetings, is recurring capital items. And I'll give you an example. A capital item is something that might be over $25,000 a year, a $25,000 a year expenditure. It might last more than 3 or 4 or 5 years. So like a police cruiser is a capital item. It costs more than $25,000 a year, and we keep a cruiser in operation for several years, right? We build those types of things into the operating budget.
So we're not borrowing.
We are not
purchase
borrowing for
those
those.
things.
We are not borrowing for those things.
Yep.
We build them into the operating budget that we did under Article 2.
Yep.
But there are some things that we buy that are big expenditures that are higher than $25,000 a year, but they don't last. We're not replacing them on a regular basis.
Yep.
And one of the examples is, the fire engine pumper. It's almost $3 million. We might have to buy one of those every decade or so. I don't build that $1 million into the operating budget of the town. What I try to do is I work with our finance director and our finance team, and we pull together one-time revenues for one-time expenditures. And that's what this article does. We have 9 items that have been detailed that we're looking to use one-time revenues for things that are not regular replacement items. Some of them might be capital projects. For example, the drainage improvement projects and the Cherry Brook culverts that are going to be done this year under the DPW. We are combining them into the one-time projects, one-time capital purchases article. And for this $2.5 million that we're looking to expend, we're going to be using available funds. We're going to close out projects that are old, and we're going to use certified free cash that the state has. Is basically it's our available funds as certified by the Department of Revenue.
So that's basically, we're talking about using revenues that have been received by the town in excess of amounts that have been actually expended by the town.
That's correct.
And in some cases, those revenues, those amounts were appropriated for a specific purpose, but we appropriated more money than we needed, so we've got an account to close out.
The project is closed, right? The
Right.
project is completed.
Yep.
Yep. So, and again, $2.56 million this year, unanimously supported by the Finance Committee and for the Select Board.
And essentially, so projects, this is work that is essentially funded by by last year's taxpayers.
Yep.
And
Yep.
so.
Yep. Or free cash is also generated by revenues that come in excess of what we expected. So if we expected, I'll just make up a number, if we expected $500,000 in permit fees that we were going to receive this year,
Yep.
right? And we ended up getting $1 million instead,
Yep.
I would have $500,000 of excess monies that the state would look at on our balance sheet and say, yes, those are, that is going to be added to your free cash. So it's not just we're returning monies or we didn't spend as much in the police or fire or DPW as we thought we were going to. It's also that we received more money than we expected, and therefore we had extra money at the end of the fiscal year.
And how do we know that? Does the state come in and audit us and
Well, they don't
certify it?
They don't audit us per se. We do file reports. The finance department will file end of the year reports with the state government. The DOR will look at our balance sheets. They will make any notes as to if they have questions about certain things. The finance department will answer those questions, and at the end of the year, they will say, the state will say, we reviewed your books and we concur. We believe you have X amount of money as certified free cash that can be used as an available fund.
Got it. Great, thanks. That's very helpful.
Yep.
So it looks like there's a couple of big dollar items in here, including a fire engine pumper. That's $1 million item.
Yeah.
And we're not raising people's taxes this year in order to pay for that.
Right. Now, what would happen, Rip, if we didn't have free cash available or other available funds? This would have to be voted on. What I would do with these articles is these would either be added to the budget request for the department that year.
Yep.
I wouldn't do that with a $1.3 million fire pumper. Or we would have separate articles for each of these, And it might require some of them to be paid for with free cash. Others might be borrowing. We might have had to do a debt exclusion borrowing for something as large as $1.3 million.
Debt exclusion, that's an interesting term.
Yeah.
Does everybody know what that means?
No, no one knows what that means.
Would you
Well,
like to
you and I know what that means.
Would you like to just explain that for a moment?
Yeah, so under the provisions of Proposition 2.5, we are only allowed to raise our taxes a certain amount. There are different ways of going above that on an annual basis. We could do a override if our operating budget was, if our taxes weren't going to be enough to cover our expenses in the operating budget. We would either have to cut the operating budget or we would look for an override. Now, fortunately, Weston is not in that position, and I don't anticipate that we will be in that position anytime soon. But you can do a debt exclusion override for a big project. And like a big project could be, for example, the fire station project, new high school, middle school project, or even a smaller but still big article. It could be a fire engine. You know, $1.3 million. Many towns don't just have that lying around that they can use. Some towns would use this as an opportunity to go for and ask the voters of the town, would you be willing to allow this project to be funded through a temporary increase in your property taxes only to cover the annual cost of the borrowing for this item.
Got it.
And then at the end, when the item is paid off, the property tax goes away.
So that doesn't have the effect, by using a debt exclusion, you avoid artificially or permanently raising the limit to which we can spend without some additional action by the taxpayers.
That's correct.
Got it.
And this would be, if to do a debt exclusion, it's a two-step process. A vote by town meeting, but also a vote at the ballot box that we will be looking for this debt exclusion. I am happy to say that it's been probably 6 or 7 years since we've done a debt exclusion project here in Weston. I think those good days are coming to an end because I do know, and I think the people who are watching this probably know too, we do have a fire station project coming in the next year or two, and we probably have some sort of a school building project that will be coming as well. Both of those projects will more than likely require a borrowing in order to approve the funding for those projects.
Understood. Thanks.
Yep. The next article is the article that we alluded to earlier. We're still under the consent agenda, remember. Everyone needs to remember this is Article 11, and this is the article that requires a 2/3 vote, and it is a water main rehabilitation. One of the articles that we do every single year is we look at our water mains, we determine which ones we're looking to fund for rehabilitation for the upcoming year. This year we're going to be looking for $650,000. It's a water borrowing, so it doesn't require a town election vote. But it does require a 2/3 vote at town meeting for the borrowing to do the water main rehabilitation. And this year we are looking to do Aberdeen Road, Fox Chase Lane, those neighborhoods in that area.
Got it. Thank you.
Again, unanimously supported by the Finance Committee and the Select Board.
As is everything in the consent agenda.
Everything in the consent agenda, yes.
As you would
correct.
expect.
As you would expect.
Yeah. So Article 12, affordable housing.
So in this case, there are some units of housing that are on the town's subsidized housing inventory that are rental units. And a lot of times these are older, some of them might be older units, have been, have been lived in for 25 years or so. Some of these properties might need, window replacements or paint jobs, or new roofs, for example.
Sure.
This is going to be the 5th round of, over the years, it's not, not every year, but over the years, this is going to be the 5th such round of funding. And the town does hold some funds that are available for housing, affordable housing purposes. And what this article will do is vote to transfer from those affordable housing sources the sum of about $160,000 for the Affordable Housing Trust to do another round of rehabilitations on some of these subsidized housing units.
Got it. Got it. Thanks.
Do you want to speak to the next article, which
Sure.
is a article that you kind of helped bring to the table?
So Article 13 is proposing a change to the town's bylaws. Right now, the town's general bylaws provide for the appointment of a finance committee. And the finance committee consists of 9 citizens of the town who are appointed for 3-year terms to serve in that capacity by the town moderator. But there's a funky provision in our current bylaw that says if there happens to be a vacancy in one of those 3-year terms, the vacancy is
Meaning
filled.
that somebody quit in the middle of their term.
Somebody who, well, it's happened in a couple of ways. I think that it could have been that someone had left town.
Yeah.
It could be that someone had passed away. It could be that someone was appointed or elected to some other committee. Because if you're a member of the finance committee, you're not permitted to serve on any other town committee. Or it could be, as we discovered once to our chagrin a few years ago, the individual who was appointed didn't happen to be a citizen of the United States, had been a resident of the town, paying taxes in town, kids going to the schools in town, but not a citizen. So a vacancy was created. And the vacancies under this town bylaw currently are filled by a vote of the remaining members of the finance committee plus the town clerk. And no one I had spoken to, and I have some suspicions, but no one I had spoken to knows why it works that way. It seems reasonable to think that since there's a moderator in office on a year-round basis, and since the moderator appoints people for their initial 3-year terms, that the moderator would fill the vacancies. And that's what this particular amendment to the town bylaws proposes. This proposed amendment would have vacancies that occur to be promptly filled by the moderator for the balance of the unexpired term. And this is a proposed change that has the unanimous support of the Finance Committee itself, and it has my support, and the Select Board's support, I do believe,
Yeah.
and the support of the town clerk, who would just as soon not be voting on appointments to the Finance Committee.
Especially since the town clerk
is not a
brings
resident.
forward a budget to the finance committee for their consideration as well, which puts the town clerk in a sometimes awkward situation.
And the town clerk is not a voter in the town, as it happens.
That's
So,
correct.
Hopefully that's not controversial.
Well, it has been deemed not to be controversial. That's why it's on the consent agenda.
Amen. And thank you to the Select Board.
And the last article on the consent agenda is Article 14, which is an annual article, but it happens to be a CPC article, a Community Preservation Act article. It's a standard article every year, and it's for the Regional Housing Service Office. The town of Weston is part of a regional group of communities that sub out or contract out to a regional entity for support on our affordable housing management. We don't have a municipal employee dedicated to public housing or affordable housing. We instead work with a bunch of other communities, and we hire one person to do this, or one firm to do this. And this article covers $48,000. It's our portion under the CPC funds to be used for the hiring of this firm.
Right, and we collaborate with other communities in a number of other ways as well. For
We do.
example, the fire department and police department have mutual aid arrangements.
Our regional public health alliance, yeah.
Yep, and our veterans officer is a shared position with a number of other communities.
Our library allows us to borrow books with other communities, and we're still part of the same umbrella. Yeah.
Good, that's practical.
And those are the consent agenda items. Now, the rest of these articles that we're going to talk about, and there's not that many left, are articles that will have full presentations and votes on each of these articles individually.
Yep. And I'll point out that when you come to town meeting and we go through the consent agenda, it will take less time to process the consent agenda than we have taken right now describing what each of these articles is about.
That's true.
Hence, efficient. And I'll point out that the reason we do that is because the town decided about 10 or 12 years ago that we needed to make town meeting more efficient. And the consent agenda was one of the proposals that a committee which studied that put forward. Adopted by the town, very effective, adopted by any number of other communities who've actually looked at us and thought that's a good thing to do. They've borrowed from us, and we've borrowed from other communities as well, where they've been ahead of us on some improvement. For example, Wayland, I think, was the first community to say, if we voted electronically, it would go a lot faster. And I think it's not been universally adopted, but I think all of our neighboring communities, particularly the open town meeting communities, are using clickers to vote.
Yeah, and consent agendas.
And consent agendas, there you go. So we're off the consent agenda.
All right, we're getting down to the nitty-gritty. Article 15 is probably one of the more substantial articles that will receive discussion at town meeting this year. And this is for the appropriation for the design, renovation, and construction of new fire stations. In this article, we are going to be looking for some funds in order to continue the design function that needs to happen as part of the fire station study. There has been a group in town separately called the Fire Station Working Group that later included all three members of the current select board who have been studying the issue of the fire stations. Our fire stations are in need of significant upgrades and renovation. They are no longer meeting the needs of the fire station nor the community at large. In particular, the fire stations don't account for certain types of gender issues. At the time that some of these fire stations were built, there were only men firefighters, and now that's not always the case. And it doesn't accommodate for sleeping provisions that for each gender. And there's a variety of other issues. On the town's website, not only is there a big explanation of this article, but there's also a project page which goes into great detail, copies of the preliminary studies, copies of some of the reports and minutes and agendas for the Fire Station Working Group. If you have any interest in this article, I encourage you to look at that project page and those materials in advance of town meeting. There will be a presentation by a member of the select board and the chair of the permanent building committee talking about the need for the funds to complete the design. We did have an article a couple of town meetings ago. There is some leftover monies for that. This article will seek to appropriate $3.1 million to add to those previously appropriated funds to kind of complete the design process for the fire stations. The what it looks like, the where it is, the size, the whole kit and caboodle, that is going to be the end product for the design funds that we're looking for at town meeting.
And I'll point out again that the amount to be requested under this article is to be transferred from available funds.
Yeah, in this case, it's going to be a free cash transfer.
Yep, but not raising your taxes this year to fund this particular element of the project.
That's correct.
And probably whatever proposal is ultimately adopted, whatever design is ultimately adopted in the course of this review, is that likely to come forward for a vote for construction funds?
Yeah,
very soon?
the next step will be construction. My guess is that it's going to be a year from now.
Okay.
I don't believe that they will be ready for the fall town meeting, if we have one, and I'm assuming we're going to have one. My expectation is it will probably be the following year, giving the town, a year to do the design and to start communicating and educating the general public on a subsequent vote for construction fees.
So if you have questions about this fairly substantial project, as Leon pointed out, there's a lot of information available on the town's website. And it would be useful for you to take a look at that information. And if you do have a question after having read that, prepare in advance, write your question down, and come to town meeting with that specific question. It will be welcome.
Yep.
Terrific.
The next article is the creation of a special purpose stabilization fund for capital purposes. If you have been watching or listening to select board meetings in the last month or so, you have heard that this has generated a lot of interest, a lot of debate among members of the Finance Committee and the Select Board. Ultimately, Rip, what's going to happen with this article at town meeting is that there will be a motion to pass over this article offered by the Select Board, and what the intention will be is that over the next few months until, say, the fall town meeting, the two boards will get together, probably in a workshop setting or the like, and they'll have further conversation as to whether or not they want to support an article like this in the fall or a future town meeting. So no action will be taken on Article 16 other than a motion to pass over.
And for everybody's benefit, a motion to pass over and so dispose of an article requires a majority vote. It counts as an action on the article, a negative action on the article. But that's traditionally the way Weston has disposed of articles that the proponents, nominally in this case the Select Board, have decided that they're not quite ready to bring forward, and they want to give it a little more thought.
Yeah, go back into the kitchen and cook it up a little bit longer.
Maybe you'll see it next year, maybe not.
Maybe not.
Okay.
The next few articles are the grouping of Community Preservation Committee articles. As I mentioned earlier at our annual town meeting, we typically always have CPA articles, Community Preservation articles. Some years ago, when the Community Preservation Act was created, the town of Weston was one of the first adopters of the Community Preservation Act. Essentially what that does is it allows for the town to collect a surcharge from every property owner in town, businesses included, for projects to be determined and to be reviewed by a committee of the town called, in this case, the Community Preservation Committee. And those people receive applications and they adjudicate on what they would like to recommend to town meeting for the use of these funds. Now, these funds, there is a match by the state. Currently, it's not as much as it used to be, but the state will match funds that are generated under the CPA funds in Weston to the tune of about 15 to 17% is what we're anticipating this year.
Right. So the Community Preservation Act was adopted, it feels like it was 20 or 30 years ago.
Correct, yeah.
And it was a mechanism under which the state was collecting a surcharge on transfers, deed filings?
Yep, that's correct. Yeah.
And it was a pretty substantial pool of money initially. And when Weston was one of the earlier participants, there was an opportunity to opt into this program at a range of local surcharge level.
And we were at the highest of 3%.
We were at the highest at 3%.
We still are at the highest at 3%.
And when we opted in initially, we were getting probably at least a 50% match, maybe even better than that.
Yeah, I don't know the answer to that question, but it was substantially higher than what
Yep.
we're getting now.
Yep.
Because a lot of other communities have opted in. When the city of Boston, for example, opted into the CPA, that dropped precipitously
Everybody else's
the
share.
amounts of shares that we're all getting on this.
So Articles 17 through 22 are Community Preservation Act articles, let's just call them that.
Yep.
And the Community Preservation Act establishes a number of buckets
That's correct.
related community preservation categories.
That's right.
And those are the historical,
Yep, historic preservation,
preservation,
open space acquisition and recreation, which is
Yep.
category 2, and then the affordable housing.
and housing.
Yeah.
And the Community Preservation Act requires the town to segregate certain percentage of these amounts into these different buckets.
Right, 10% goes into the 3 categories,
Yep.
and then the remaining 70% goes into the unallocated allocation portion of the Community Preservation Fund.
So we have somewhere 4 big buckets of money
That's correct.
sitting there, and the Community Preservation Committee accepts applications for projects that would utilize these funds.
That's correct.
Some of the applications are for funds from a specific bucket, and others are from the unallocated. I guess it's also a bucket.
That's right.
And that's what these articles represent.
Right. Article 17 actually does nothing more than set the buckets. This is how much is going into each bucket, and it reestablishes the fund on an annual basis.
Got it. Okay. And there'll be a presentation under Article 17 that will describe that.
Right. It will be from the Community Preservation Committee's representative,
Yep.
who will describe what the CPA does and what projects they're bringing forward this year.
Got it. And does this also set aside a certain amount for administration of the Community
It does.
Preservation Act?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And then we'd move on to Article 18, which is specific to a recreation open space project.
Right. So Article 18 is the first specific project that will have a presentation. And this came from residents of the town who were looking to acquire use CPA funds to have a feasibility study done for the creation of a dog park here in Weston. They're looking for $18,000, and the Finance Committee, the CPC, in this case, the CPC takes recommendations on all these articles. The CPC has unanimously supported the articles that they're bringing forward to town meeting this year. And in the case of Article...
Let me just stop you for
Sure.
1 second there. People make applications to the CPC.
Correct.
And the CPC looks at those applications, and they decide independently whether or not they're going to bring those
If they will
forward.
sponsor those articles at town
Yeah,
meeting.
and if they don't want to sponsor the article because they don't think it's ready or they don't like the idea, it doesn't come to town meeting.
Which happened this year. There was an application that came forward. The applicant did not meet all the requirements that the CPC puts forward.
Got it.
And as such, the CPC declined to bring it forward to town meeting for a vote this year.
And for everybody's benefit, the CPC is a pretty complicated committee, isn't it? I forget what the total number of members in the CPC might be.
Oh yeah, it's a large number, and it has representatives from affordable housing, recreation, and historical. There are, and as well as residents of the community. I mean, it's a great committee to be on. What better thing to do than to, determine which creative projects get to come forward and use CPA funds. It's a nice committee to be on.
Yeah, but I would mention, for the benefit of the Community Preservation Committee members, that they aren't a rubber stamp here, that they actually exercise some judgment in deciding whether to bring a proposal forward.
They do ask tough questions.
And they ask tough questions. So that's the first gate that a proposal needs to pass
Correct.
in order to find its way to the warrant. And then it's on the warrant, and before it actually gets a vote by the town meeting, the Finance Committee is going to look at it again.
They do opine on all financial matters coming to town meeting.
And some matters non-financial.
Yeah.
Whatever they would like to
Yeah.
opine on.
Yeah.
In this case, the Finance Committee also supports this particular project, but not unanimously.
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
And then the next, and that's for design of a, well, it's for, it's not really a design, is
It's
it?
for a feasibility.
Feasibility study.
Right,
Yep.
right.
And then Article 19, this is on community housing.
So the last article was only for 18,000. This one is significantly higher. This one is looking for $1 million of community housing funds of the CPC for the outfitting of Brook School apartments, lower level. A few years ago, Rip, you might remember, we had an article for CPA funds for design
Yep.
of 2 units at in the basement of one of the buildings at Brook School Apartments.
Yep.
For the creation of 2 new units of housing. This is going to be for the construction. That design was done, and this is going to be the funds to complete the construction of those 2 units. It's coming forward at the request of the Affordable Housing Trust and the Elderly Housing Committee at Brook School Apartments,
Yep.
and has been unanimously supported by the Finance Committee and the Select Board, as well as the CPC.
And all of the funds for this particular proposal are coming from the community housing bucket.
Correct.
So these are funds that have accumulated over time.
That's
The
right.
10% every year that's set aside for community housing.
That's correct.
Okay. Finance Committee, again, unanimously supports this proposal.
Yep. Article 20 is, again, for the design fees for a playground at Burchard Park. A group of people brought forward to the Recreation Commission a request for feasibility or design fees for a playground at Burchard Park. And the Rec Commission has adopted this as one of their submissions for this year. They are looking for $50,000 of CPA funds out of the unallocated portion for a design of a playground at Burchard Park.
Got it. So this is this a proposal that's coming forward? Is the proponent of this particular expenditure the Recreation Commission?
It would be in
Okay.
this case. I mean, it will be spoken to by residents as well.
Yep.
The main presentation may actually be residents of the town who are not part of the Recreation Commission.
Yep.
That's to be determined, but the Rec Commission has endorsed this project.
And the funding for this one is coming out of the unallocated bucket.
Unallocated, correct.
Okay. Great. And this is another one that's supported by the Finance Committee, but not unanimously. Is that right?
That's correct.
Thank you. Okay. And Article 21.
The next article is Article 21. It's for the town, it's also a CPA article for the town green rehabilitation. Our friends at the Tree Advisory Committee have worked with other town boards, including the Select Board, on a town green succession planting plan. We came to town meeting before and got the funds for this project.
Yep.
And this is going to be phase 1 of replacing some of the trees that we've lost over the years within the town green. This is a $300,000 article of using CPA funds. It's going to come from the unallocated portion of the Community Preservation Fund, and it was unanimously supported by the Select Board and the Finance Committee, as well as the Community Preservation Committee.
Terrific.
On the town's website, there is a extensive copy of the report that they're using as the basis for this project.
Is the plan itself laid out so that one
It
can
is,
see
but
what's
the
proposed?
plan is not written in stone.
Got it.
It is generally established. The Tree Advisory Committee will work with the DPW and with the Select Board and probably the Planning Board and other community leaders on what we will do on an annual basis.
Got it. And just for my benefit, because it's not clear to me, maybe I didn't read it yet, who's supervising this project?
It would be supervised by the Department of Public Works. We are, the DPW is the tree warden for the town.
Yeah.
It will be under the general direction of the town manager, as all financial articles in the warrant are,
Yeah.
but it will be managed by and large by the DPW.
And the tree people in town will also have some input into
Whether
the
I want them
decisions that
to
are
or
made.
not, they will have input on it for sure.
And you do welcome their input.
Sure,
Yes.
let's just say that for this presentation. Yes.
Okay.
Article 22 is a article for Field 1 lights. This is a recommendation from, a request from the boosters, athletic boosters, and taken on by the Recreation Commission here in Weston. It is for the installation of lights at the existing multipurpose field at the high school, known as Field 1.
This is the first multi-purpose turf field that the town built. Isn't this the one right near the high school parking lot?
I believe that is I believe that is the one.
Yep.
So what this does is it is for the design and construction of these lights. And I will say that the boosters have been raising significant funds from the community for this project already. They've raised, I believe at the time we are recording this, in excess of $100,000, and it might be closer to $150,000 than it is to $100,000. So the community has stepped forward in large numbers to support this project. The hope is that we can get this done by this fall. It will be a heavy lift to try to work through the procurement laws of Massachusetts
Sure.
in order to make this happen. But we're trying to get a head start on this as early as we can with some of the fundraised monies to try to move this along as quickly as possible. And I really want to commend the Recreation Commission and the boosters for their leadership in bringing this forward and their commitment to getting this project done. It's amazing how much work has gone into this already up to this point.
Terrific. Let me ask you just a
Sure.
quick question about the expenditure of funds. The funds that are appropriated under this article can't be spent until the 2027 fiscal year, which begins July 1. But the privately raised money
Could be spent,
can be spent earlier
Provided-
to kickstart the project.
right, provided that
The project is approved.
well, I would say provided that those gift funds are accepted by either the select board or the school committee. This property is managed by the schools primarily.
Yep.
So the school committee, I believe, has already accepted a portion of, or if not much of these funds. So when those funds are available, the design can commence. And I think we've already begun, and by the time this airs, some of that work will already have been started.
Yep.
Even though the article hasn't yet been approved, because the monies that we would be spending would be accepted gift funds.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Yep.
Again, the Finance Committee unanimously supports this.
That's correct. The conveyance of, and those are the end, that is the end of the articles for the Community Preservation Fund. Next, we're moving to the Article 23, which is the conveyance of Zero Riverside.
What is Zero Riverside?
So Zero Riverside, if you've attended town meeting in the past, you may have heard us talking about Zero Riverside when Greatlands came before the town. This is the old Liberty Mutual property. They came to us to seek permission a few years ago, to change the town's bylaws to allow biotech to be at the Liberty Mutual properties.
Yep.
And the town agreed to do so, and in that agreement, we also entered into a development agreement with Greatlands that we would swap land. They own some land in the back of their property, and we own some land in the front of the road. And what we agreed to was we were going to swap those two parcels so that the town would take the parcel in the back, join it with another parcel that the town already owned, and convey that property ultimately for the construction of housing units at the end of Riverside. And so that is the intent. We are looking to finalize the last piece of this puzzle.
Yep.
We've been working with a group of residents, primarily made up of people who live in the area, on what a RFP would look like, a request for proposals would look like for the development of up to 20 units of housing at the very end of Riverside, essentially abutting the highway.
Aha. And is that Zero Riverside is referring to this little parcel of
That's
land
correct.
at the end of that?
And what this will do is it will allow the select board to convey that property for housing purposes.
Aha. I mean, we already own that
We
parcel,
do. We already own the
but
parcel.
only for specific purposes.
That's correct. What this will allow us to do is take that parcel and allow the select board to convey it to a developer, so to speak, for the construction of housing.
Understood. Okay, great. So this is, in a way, this is kind of technical compliance to make
It
sure
is.
that the select board has the authority to do the specific thing that they've essentially are working on agreeing to do.
Right now, it's for general municipal purposes. We're looking to use it for housing purposes, and town meeting says yay or nay.
Aha. So there's a further decision down the road that'll probably be informed by more interaction among the select board and the planning committee.
It won't be a
and-
town meeting vote. What we will do is we will go to, at least I don't anticipate that we need another round of town meeting monies unless we are going to dedicate some funds to the construction of the housing units ourselves. Okay. And we do have some funds that came to us for this purpose, not taxpayer monies,
Got it.
as part of the Great Lens Development Agreement.
Okay. Okay, great.
And this is unanimously supported by the Affordable Housing Trust, the Select Board, and the Finance Committee.
Okay.
Just a couple more articles. The first is Article 24, and this is establishes a town meeting study committee. And I'm going to defer to you, Mr. Moderator.
Okay, well, thank you very much. I suggested that this would be a good thing to do. And I actually plan to speak to this article at the town meeting. And because of that, we'll leave the moderator post and appoint a temporary moderator to handle this portion of the meeting, under the discussion under this article. But as I mentioned earlier, I think we had a town meeting study, I think a couple of them in 2013, 14, 15, in that range, that generated a number of recommendations, some of which the town adopted, which have made town meeting a lot more efficient, I would say. And I think it's worthwhile to go back and reevaluate where we stand on a periodic basis. And I think 10 or 12 years is about right. There are a couple of issues that were left hanging and farmed out for further study that never concluded, including the question about remote participation in town meeting. There was an interest expressed by the people who answered surveys back in 2015 that it would be interesting to see if those voters who were unable to attend a town meeting in person could be enabled to participate remotely. There currently are requirements for us as a community to accommodate disabilities that would prevent someone from participating in person or in participating fully at the meeting in person without some sort of additional assistance. But for the most part, voters who are able to come to the meeting are not having problems. And we've not received I don't know many, if any, requests for ADA accommodations. We did have a lot of interest expressed in sort of a general accommodation for people who couldn't come to the meeting. And we've not really gotten to the end of the question, would the town like to do that?
Or could the town do that?
Or could the town do that?
Yeah.
There are a number of efforts underway right now to provide an opportunity for a pilot project that would investigate this sort of thing. But again, we don't really know right now how Weston's current voters feel. And there are a number of other things that would be useful to look at. This proposed establishment of a town meeting study committee is based on the last committee work that we did. It would establish a committee appointed by the moderator that would report on an interim basis by January of next year and on a final basis by the time of town meeting next year, and would basically be investigating the ability and the desirability of making a number of changes to the way in which we conduct town meeting. I can say that in the last 3 years, Wayland has done this, Concord has done this, Carlisle has done this, and Lincoln has done this. Everybody is sort of revisiting the question of, can open town meeting be made better? And I'm hoping that we can join that crowd at a time when we can benefit for a lot of the collective work that has already been done by those other communities, and then target specifically how do Weston voters feel about this, and do this in an efficient way. So hopefully, and I'll put in a plug here, if this passes, it requires a majority vote to establish this committee. I will be looking for 5 registered voters in Weston who would be willing to participate in this committee. So if you have any interest, get in ahead of the crowd and let me know that you might be interested in participating.
Thank you. Thank
Sure.
you, Rip. And then the last article is a citizen's petition. As Rip said at the very beginning of this, there's many ways that articles appear on the town meeting warrant. One of them is by citizen petition, which is you get signatures from registered voters in the town of Weston asking for a certain item to be added to the warrant. And if the certain number of signatures it meets the quota, the article will be added to the warrant. Annual town meeting has a lower threshold of signatures than a special town meeting. But in this one, this is a petitioned article by residents of the town of Weston to add an additional liquor license for all alcohol beverages to be drunk on the premises. Now, what does that mean? Well, the town of Weston is somewhat of a dry community. We don't have restaurants, we don't have bars. We do have one, by special act, one liquor license for the town of Weston. And that is for the JST property when the JST ultimately is constructed. However, we've had a request, and the request is from the owners, proprietors, visitors, and patrons of Heirloom, which is right near Brothers Marketplace in Town Center. And the petition is to add a second all alcohol restaurant liquor license so that there would be a beer, wine, alcohol menu.
You can order a drink with your meal.
You can order a drink with your meal at Heirloom.
Yep. So that's the proposal.
So that's the proposal. And the people of the town will get to decide. What this will be is a special act. What we're going to be doing is we are going to be asking the people of the town to whether or not they feel adding a new liquor license would be okay. And if the answer is yes, majority vote at town meeting, if the answer is yes, then the select board can send to the legislature a special act, and the copy of the special act is actually in the warrant itself.
Yep.
And that special act will be sent by the select board to the legislature for consideration as a special act to grant us an additional liquor license. So we will see what happens.
And the licensing authority for this liquor license would be the select board.
Is the select board.
So the special act, if approved by town, would be submitted by the select board to the legislature. If the legislature decides in its wisdom to grant this home rule petition, then
It gets kicked back to the select board.
kicked back to the select board, and the select board would have the authority to issue this requested liquor license.
That would be correct.
Got it. That's great.
Yeah.
And then we'll be done.
And then we'll be done.
And probably not that late, I suspect, looking at the business to be conducted and the level of controversy I've sort of sensed in the community. So I'll just say, as I did in the beginning, we're going to get started on time. We're going to move efficiently through the business outlined in this warrant. I've been asked, you may or may not be aware, that I sent out a survey to the town for people to comment on town meeting, what about it is good, what about it is bad. One of the things that was bad was the fact that the moderator wasn't very strict in holding people to their time limits. And I'm going to take that seriously. So if you're planning on presenting, confirm in advance what your time limit is, and be mindful of the fact that when the yellow light comes on at the podium, you will have 30 seconds to wrap up, because when the red light comes on, I'm going to cut you off if you're not done.
And that's mainly to let everybody who wants to have an opportunity to speak and not be there until June 30th.
Absolutely, absolutely. We're going to be efficient and fair and respectful of everybody who wants to express a view. And I'll endeavor not to cut off debate prematurely, but when it's time to vote, it'll be time to vote.
Yeah.
And
so, just in conclusion, I just want to say, first, I want to thank you, Rip, for doing this. I think this is a good way of educating the people about town meeting. We have a couple of dates coming up that I want to make sure everyone is aware of. Again, April 28th, 6 p.m. at Town Hall and on Zoom, Rip and I will be answering any questions that there may be from residents about town meeting. So this is right before town meeting. Annual town election is Saturday, May 2nd. It is in-person voting from 8 a.m. to 6 p.m. at the Town Hall Auditorium. So elections we're in the middle of election day. So, please, have your voice heard. Town meeting is Monday, May 4th at 7 p.m. at the high school auditorium. We anticipate that this is going to be a one-night town meeting. So I would anticipate all articles being dealt with in a timely manner on May 4th. And we hope to see you all there at one, or if not all, of these events.
Yep. Thank you very much. Thank you, Leon.
Thank you.
This was fun.
Thank you.